Thanks for tuning in. This is a video series called Answers with Andrew, and it's something that I'm doing just to try to spread some knowledge around in the Northeastern Ohio communities that I serve. I live in Akron here and practice in downtown Akron, but I do serve clients all over Northeast Ohio. And the areas of law that I serve in are estate planning, estate and trust administration, real estate, both residential and commercial, corporate or small business law, as well as asset protection planning. And so the topic that I'd like to go over today is one that comes up probably almost every week that I practice in my practice, which is somebody asks me, how do I know I've got the right stuff in my trust? And what they're asking is my trust properly funded? That's the legal terminology that we would use to say, okay, are the right assets held inside of your trust, and are assets that shouldn't be in your trust not in your trust, and maybe set up to go into your trust later if that's appropriate, or to another beneficiary altogether. And so I would like to talk through this issue of trust funding today. I'm going to use a hypothetical example of a Smith family trust. And we're going to look at some common types of assets that I personally would put inside of the revocable trust, as well as assets that maybe wouldn't be inside the trust that we would set up to go perhaps to the surviving spouse first, and to the trust second, if that makes sense. So I've drawn a picture. It's a little bit more complicated one, but stick with me and let's go through it. So again, always show you downtown Akron. Love Akron, love Rubber City. So happy and thankful to get to practice here. Here's my trust, okay? My Smith family trust, represented by this circle on the board, right? So up top, I've got the Smith family spouses, the two people that made the Smith family trust. Down below, I've got children, right? The trust is eventually going to have different provisions, and I've got a healthy, stable child, and a child that's affected either by special needs or by addiction issues, right? So there's going to be some special planning that's done for this child that's maybe not done for these two. But let's go ahead and look at what do they have in their trust right now. Well, what they've got, obviously the family home, right? We go ahead and we deed the family home in where they live. We've got a vacation condo that they own that could be in another state, right? That's a good reason to have a trust. We've got that deeded into the family trust. Up top, we've got LLC membership interest or a stock certificate, right? Depending on if the family business that they own is a limited liability company or an Ohio corporation, that would either be limited liability membership interest or stock ownership, stock certificates showing ownership of shares, stock shares. And so that's in the trust. We've got a family money market account, right? We've also got a smaller entity that's held inside of the trust that owns investment properties that the Smith owns, right? Why would I want to put those into their own LLC and put that LLC inside the trust? Well, by having the LLC inside the trust, I'm going to avoid probate with it. By having the investment properties inside of an LLC, I'm trying to limit the liability if something bad would happen at one of those properties, an injury, carbon monoxide, fire, you name it. Somebody gets hurt there. And I want to limit the liability to just what's owned by the LLC, which might be a bank account that we've hopefully kept somewhat cash poor, and then the actual two pieces of property themselves. And then down at the bottom, I've got a TD Ameritrade account. It's not that uncommon for somebody to do some of their own investing and to have some, day trading money, stock money, funds that they've invested in, etc. And then I've got some assets that are outside of the trust, right? So I've got personal checking account. Well, why wouldn't we put that in there right away? Well, a lot of people don't want their personal checks to say, Smith Family Trust on the top. They want, they've used their own name and their own debit cards, etc. for a long time. They want to leave checking accounts outside of the trust. So it would not be uncommon to set a personal checking account up, pay on death, right? That's what POD stands for, to the surviving spouse first, if they are alive, and second to the family trust, because that's where we're going to say how assets are to be managed for the kids. Some other examples of assets that may not go right into the trust right away are 401ks or IRAs, right? Individual retirement account. The IRS says this has to be owned by an individual while they are still surviving. So again, if they're not dead yet and they are alive and have a 401k or an IRA, they have to own it in their own personal name. and it can transfer to a spouse first and into the trust upon their death if their spouse is no longer alive. Same thing for life insurance, right? You can put life insurance into the trust now, but sometimes people will leave it out. They will name a spouse first, followed by the trust second. So this is an example of trust funding, things that we would put in now versus some things that we would maybe put in later. I hope this video has been helpful to you. I've hit my 5 minutes and I'm out of here.